All right, so today we're diving into something really fascinating, a lost manuscript. Now, this isn't a real historical document, but an imagined final confession from the one and only Jack Kerouac. Think of it as a journey into the mind of a man at the very end of all his roads, pieced together from all the themes that really haunted his life and his work. Wow. I mean, right from the first line, there's no glory, no romance of the open road. It's just this brutally honest, bleak statement. This single sentence really sets the tone for everything we're about to unpack. This isn't about the myth, it's about the man who was trapped inside it. And this is where it all ends. You know, not in some vibrant city like San Francisco or New York, not on a mountaintop seeking enlightenment, but in a small house in Florida. It's 1970, he's only 48, and that vast American poem he was trying to write has just shrunk to the size of this one room. So you have to ask, right? How did the man who basically defined freedom for millions of people end up feeling so completely and utterly trapped? How did that wild promise of the road lead him here, to this quiet, desperate end? Let's get into it. Okay, so first up, the end of the road. The manuscript paints this picture not of some cultural icon, but of a man just wrestling with the crushing weight of his own legacy. I mean, this phrase from the text just says it all, doesn't it? Kerouac, the so-called king of the beats, felt like he was in a cage that he himself had helped build. He wasn't that wild saint of the American highway anymore. He was just a man haunted by the ghost of his younger self. And here's one of his deepest regrets, how his most famous book was totally misunderstood. See, he saw On the Road as an elegy, like a sad song for a moment that was already gone. But an entire generation saw it as a how-to guide for rebellion, and that fundamental misreading would follow him for the rest of his life. So this leads us right to the central theme of his life, this beautiful but also really dangerous myth of freedom, and the friend who came to embody it all. And here you can just see the tragic gap between the fiction and the reality. On the left, you've got Dean Moriarty, the hero of the book, this restless god of the road. But on the right, you have the real man, Neal Cassady, wounded, deeply flawed, and in the end, just crushed by the pressure of being a legend. You can just feel Kerouac's guilt here. It's profound. He felt that by turning his friend into this larger-than-life myth, he had accidentally poisoned him. You know, Neal Cassady died alone on a railroad track in Mexico, and in this imagined confession, Kerouac basically sees his own fingerprints on that destruction. But his search wasn't just for America. It was a deeply spiritual one. So now we're going to explore these two powerful and often conflicting forces that were always pulling at his soul, Buddhism and his native Catholicism. So he stumbles upon Buddhism in the mid-50s, and for him, it's a total revelation. The Four Noble Truths gave him a system, a logical path to get away from the suffering that was caused by his endless desires for more wine, more words, more road. It was like an intellectual escape hatch. But, of course, it was never that simple. Buddhism was his quest for his mind, right? But Catholicism, that was in his bones. It was the language of guilt and sin and grace that he could just never unlearn. One was a philosophy he chose, the other was a wound he was born with. And that wound goes all the way back to his older brother Gerard, who he saw as a saint, and who died when Kerouac was just 4 years old. This question haunted him his entire life. Gerard's death left this spiritual void, this feeling that God takes the pure ones and leaves the sinners behind to struggle. So now we get to the corrosive effect of his celebrity, and how that label, King of the Beats, which was meant to be a crown, slowly turned into a cage. This timeline really charts the whole tragic arc. 1957 isn't a celebration. It's the moment something breaks. By 61, that spiritual seeking he wrote about in the Dharma Bombs has curdled into this terrifying breakdown at Big Sur. And it all leads right here, to Florida in 1970, just waiting for the end. Oh, and this one debunks one of the biggest myths about him. That famous scroll manuscript, it wasn't some effortless flash of genius. It was a raw first draft. The spontaneous prose he was famous for was actually the product of years of hard, unglamorous work. The legend, as this fictional Kerouac confesses, was a trap he built himself. Okay, now we're reaching the real heart of this confession, because behind all the myths and the fame were the people who truly defined him, the ghosts from his hometown, Lowell, Massachusetts. First, his brother Gerard, the saint who died and left this impossible standard of holiness for Jack to live up to. For Kerouac, Gerard was the pure soul, and he was the sinner who got left behind, always trying to right his way back to that state of grace. And then there was his mother, Gabrielle, who he called Mamer. She was the absolute anchor of his life, his constant center. And the manuscript reveals this incredible conflict. He spent his life running from her to find freedom, only to find that the only real home he ever knew was right back there with her. And finally, Jan, his daughter. She was the ghost that haunted him the most, because this failure was all his. She was the road he didn't take, the responsibility he ran from. This is maybe the most devastating moment in the entire confession. After all the spiritual searching, all the quest for truth, the one single truth he can't escape is this one. He admits to denying his own child, and he knows it's a sin that no philosophy, no adventure could ever redeem. And so we arrive at the end. The title of this fictional work, The Sound of Departing Bells, it just evokes those fading church bells from his childhood in Lowell. It's a final look back, a final inventory of his life. After all the regret, the guilt, the confusion, this is what it all boils down to. It's his own simple but incredibly profound summary of his life's work. It wasn't about starting a revolution or being some prophet. It was just about bearing witness to his time, to his world, and trying his best to get it all down on paper. And so the manuscript leaves us with this final question. What really measures a life? Is it the legend everyone knows, that loud public story? Or is it found in the quieter, fading sounds of the things that truly mattered? Family, home, faith, and regret. The departing bells of a life lived.